volume is a little low.
And we are live. Welcome to Show and Tell, episode number 3. Tonight's episode is AR15, Future Technology and Innovation, where we're going to be focusing on what we think the AR-15, what's going to basically happen with the AR-15 platform here in the future in the next 5, 10, 20 years, where we see that where the platform's headed um, as far as technology and innovation goes. Tonight, as always, I have David with me. What's going on, David?
Hello, brother. Not doing a lot, just hanging out and building guns.
Nice. Did you do anything this past week? Did you get to go shooting or build a cool gun or try any new cool parts or anything?
I actually got hooked up with Velocity triggers now. I am a dealer for them. And just got a bunch of those into the shop and enjoying that. I did go shooting. I was shooting a Remington 700 7mm Ultra Mag, which my shoulder really didn't like too much.
Oh, I
And
bet.
I also got a chance to shoot again a firearm I hadn't shot in probably, let's see, since 1994, however long that was. I came back to the States on leave, and my buddy had bought one of those 50 caliber Desert Eagles, and we shot one of those. And I actually had a buddy bring in one to the shop, and I actually shot one again for the first time in many, many years. And it was very quite the same. I mean, they've changed them a little bit, actually quite a bit, but it brought back some memories. I tell you that.
Are they more reliable now? Because I seem to recall
I
when Desert Eagles
I
first
didn't
came
have a
out.
reliability issue with the first one we shot, and I didn't have a reliability issue with this one. But then again, both times I shot less than 100 rounds. So I don't really have a fair say in the matter, because I would imagine the tolerances on the weapons are pretty tight. And I would imagine as carbon starts to build up on the it's got kind of a dual piston gas system on it. And I would imagine as you got more rounds downrange that you may run into some issues with reliability because of the way the bolt is somewhat like an M16 or AR-15 bolt. It has a multi-head locking lug system that where the bolt actually locks into a barrel extension that is actually part of the barrel, and is locked up there. So it's a much tighter lockup, just like an AR-15 M16 rifle is.
Oh, and I doubt that many people are actually shooting a gun like that too much at the range, right? Like I bet a
Yeah,
hundred
it's very
rounds.
expensive.
Oh yeah, and just hard on the hands like that. I mean, I can only
Oh
imagine
yeah,
shooting a
it's
50,
very it's
80, 100
uncomfortable. After
rounds.
about, I've got a little bit of tendonitis in my wrist or carpal tunnel, something. It hurts most of the times when I'm bending it in weird angles, and that made my wrist hurt after shooting about 10 rounds. I was like, yeah, that's kind of brings back memories, but I don't remember my wrist hurting like that when I shot it the last time.
That's sweet. Did you get to try any new parts this week or anything? Any new AR parts you get in?
Not, I got in a new handguard I'm putting on a guy's rifle, but I'm waiting on the guy to bring in the rest of the pieces, the lower receiver, upper receiver, and everything. And so I can start building it. But I'm assembling small, everything that he needs, like the lower parts kit, a trigger, and all that. Got all that stuff here, but I just need because he's wanting flat dark earth as the accents. So he wanted a flat dark earth handguard, and he ordered a Midwest Industries, and I've never put one of those on a AR-15 before. I've used particularly one company when I put on handguards, and it's just because I know the guys and they're a local company here in Florida, so I like to support them. SLR Rifle Works is what I usually use, and I have used some Bravo companies as well. They're what is it? Is it called the Alpha Rail?
Yeah, yep. The KMR
That
alpha
was the
rail
one
and
I
stuff.
believe that had the magnesium and aluminum and was like a super light rail. And then they went to an all aluminum because supposedly they said that magnesium was very hard for them to get. And I was like kind of bewildered on that one. I've never heard of, being in the freest country in the world and not being able to get a metal. I think it's
Well,
more or less that the magnesium was giving them trouble. Like anytime you try to bond two alloys together, you can always run into a little bit of an issue.
I think you're
And
exactly right because there's
that
other
might have been
magnesium
something to do with
parts.
it. Maybe not, though. That's just to
I
be debated. But
I think you're
yeah,
exactly
so I
right.
shot a little bit. And oh, real quick, Dead Horse, your volume is a little bit low. I didn't realize when I was checking your volume before that I had my volume maxed out.
Oh, okay. Let's see what I can do here to fix that. I don't know what's going on here. Let's see. I think maybe next show I might try my headset instead of this external mic and see which sounds better. I'll play back 2 shows and then go with whatever works better. Because I have a headset I can use too if need be. Let's see, but does that sound better?
It's still low.
Okay, I'll see if I can mess with it. So I guess let's go ahead and let's start the show. Um, so AR-15 future tech and technology. So I'll let you go first, David. In the next 5, 10, 20 years, what do you think is coming to the AR-15? What sort of innovation and neat features and parts and coatings and like the whole gambit? What do you see the AR-15 in 5, 10, 20 years?
Well, I would have to say the biggest improvement I'm going to suggest that they're doing right now, they're testing this, is a monocular system that each soldier will have, and he'll be able to move that monocular over onto his dominant eye, and he'll have a basically an artificial, like an AI type of environment inside that monocular, and he'll be looking through a camera mounted uh, wireless system with a camera mounted onto his weapon system, onto his M16 or his M4. And this will basically give him the ability to sight the weapon onto any target out to ranges of past 600 to 800 meters. So in knowing kind of how they're gearing this monocular, I would say you're going to see a change in caliber from the 5.56 to something that's got a little bit longer reach out with it.
Like a
Still
6.5
sticking.
Grendel?
Um, I still think that the 224 Valkyrie or something even better will be developed in the next 20 years that will basically work in GI mags and work with the regular M16 bolt carrier, except for maybe changing the bolt itself, to a different caliber cartridge size. But I see this monocular system being the biggest thing to hit the market since magnified optics went on to the AR-15
Now,
or
now you're
M16.
now you touched that this is being developed for the military. So if the military is still developing it, how long do you think something like this before it falls in civilian hands? Because didn't they even have like night vision in World War II and Vietnam, but like it really didn't even start falling into civilian hands until like the late 70s and 80s?
Yeah,
So do you
basically,
think it's still that far out, or do you think we'll see it in the civilian market in 10, 20 years, like for hog
we'll
hunting
see it
and
in the
stuff like that?
civilian market sooner than that. The reason why you didn't get the night vision and the thermal optics into the hands of civilian market is number one, no one was thinking about, hey, we can sell this on the civilian market, because you got to think of the mind set. AR-15s, M16s weren't a high seller back in the 60s, the late 60s when they were available to the civilian market. they really Armorlight and Colt, when they tried to sell to the civilian market, they didn't get a lot of buyers. It was because the people of the 60s and 70s had grown up on bolt action rifles, and it was trying to sell them on a whole new technology that they weren't very familiar with. And just like getting a new shooter to come in to shoot, there's a little bit of an apprehension there because you don't know anything. It's same with those. People didn't know how to use them. The calibers that were available for them were one, you had a 223, 5.56 caliber. Now you've got all these other calibers that are available for all different types of uses. Basically, people didn't advance technology wise back in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s as fast as we did. We hit a electronic revolution in the 90s, and with that came advancements, leaps and bounds in technology as far as like the microprocessor and stuff. Now we're able to make optics wireless with rechargeable batteries that'll last a month, you know what I'm saying, or at least 5,000 hours. You've got wireless technology where that is so reliable that it can be used on a weapon system now. And basically, I don't think that the lag going from military to civilian market is any more further out than 2 years. So I think once the military land the contract and people start designing these systems, that there's going to be an uprisal all over in the electronics industry, and these companies like Surefire, Streamlight, all these companies that work with rechargeable lights and rechargeable entities that you use on your rifles. You already see it with the infrared and the night vision right now. It's been a big surge. There's a huge aftermarket manufacturing of night vision and thermal vision optics and actual camera equipment for the average Joe. And it's dropped such considerable amounts in price that most people can afford it now.
Afford it now.
You can, huh?
No, I was gonna say, yeah, they can afford it now. You're exactly right. That's probably one of the reasons why it didn't come to the civilian market for so long, is because just simply price, right?
Oh
Uh,
yeah. When Uncle
I mean,
Sam was footing the bill, $3,700 for a night vision scope wasn't bad. But when
when
you're an average guy, you $3,700. I mean, that's a
well, when
freaking half a car.
well, when I bought my first night vision system, which is a Gen 1 like Russian system from Russia, and
Right.
this was back in like 2001 or so. I bought this 2000, and this system was from like the 80s. I don't even know if it's I don't even know if it can be considered Gen 1. It might be like a pre-Gen 1. Like, I'm not even sure about that, if it's actually even considered Gen 1. But it's definitely from like the 80s. So when I got it, it was already like 20 years old, and I paid like $1,200 for it. And
Oh
now,
yeah.
I see companies like ATN and stuff having night vision optics that seem to work fairly well for $4, 5, $600. I mean, that people are out there using hog hunting with stuff like that. And yeah, there's still $2,000 night vision systems, right? But there's but stuff that's only $400 that blows what I have, which was an actual like military issued night vision system 20 years ago away, right? Or actually now I guess it's more like 40 years ago, but it completely just puts
Well,
stuff in the dust.
yeah. The problem with the Russian night vision is it was never comparable to the American night vision.
Oh
So if
no.
you had, like, say you had a set of 1980s Russian night vision and you had a
Well,
set of Gen 1 or Gen 2 1980s US,
you know
even
the
if they
old
were
VHS
matched up to,
camcorders? You know the old
huh?
VHS camcorders, like that you'd put on your shoulder that held like the full VHS cassette tapes and stuff.
Oh
That's
yeah,
about
with
how
the
big.
pack.
That's about how big this system is too. So not only the price has gone down, but they've actually shrunk so much in size that now it's actually like someone actually wouldn't mind having it on their rifle, where as my system is so big and actually weighs more than some of the rifles I've had it on, right? More than the rifle itself. And it's so big. It's like mounting a VHS camcorder to your rifle. But, I see technology like red dots improving. I see a lot of these solar powered red dots really, there's been solar powered red dots in the past. Like Trigicon's had one and stuff, but they've always kind of been a fail. And just lately, with companies like HoloSun and stuff, have I really seen like, hey, I think they finally got it down to where like this is actually plausible. Like this is actually holding up. It's working. It's staying waterproof. It's so I see more solar powered red dots and rechargeable red dots with just built-in lithium batteries, where you don't got to even swap batteries. You can plug it into your cigarette lighter or your home charger or an external little battery pack to charge it from, things like that. And I also see some of these scopes that are nowadays, like Burris has one called the Eliminator, I believe.
Yes.
There's
They got
ATN.
the full version of that out.
Yeah, and ATN has one called the Day Night night vision system. But both these systems, they're pretty affordable, between about the $400 range and the $1,000 range, and just those two systems. But I see more companies copying those guys and producing affordable systems like that, because those systems can make for really ethical, like one-shot kills at long range for hunting. They can be very effective for some of these systems have built-in rangefinders, whether it's a laser rangefinder or some of them are a point and click system. Whereas if you know the height of your object, you just point the reticle at the feet, you hit a button, then you point it at the head, hit a button, and then you tell it, oh, that's 6 feet. And then it says, okay, if that's 6 feet, well, it's this far away. And but then they're also ballistically programmed, where you can actually program your exact load, your velocity, your ballistic coefficiency, bullet weights, like everything.
Barrel length, all goes into that calculation.
And then it tells you your holdover. And then not only that, you can hook it to to wind meters through Bluetooth, stuff like that, and then your barometric pressure and humidity and temperature and that now you have even more factors coming into that. And I see them even building all that into just one scope that has a built-in wind meter, a built-in I see all that coming together into one. And that's where I see optics going, is a lot of those ballistic type scopes with built-in ballistic programming and laser range finding capabilities, solar powered, rechargeable batteries. I see that kind of being the future of optics. Now, the next thing I would say is going to be the next big innovation in AR-15s. The new technology is something that's been around as long as the AR-15 has, and for the AR-15, and that's chromed bulk carrier groups. That is an ancient technology that is, from my opinion, and just my opinion, is still superior to anything else we have today as far as coatings go, for bulk carrier groups. And so I see more companies starting to go back to see a swing with guys like me and you, and there's a lot of other guys out there that are a lot more famous than me and you, like Chris, like Bartocci and stuff like that. These guys run chrome bulk carrier groups, and we all swear by them, and we all kind of put our reputations out there by saying this is the best thing. And I think other manufacturers, I think it's going to catch on more and more, and I think eventually it might still not be for 10 years when they can when they can do chroming even cheaper than they can now or something. Innovate the process on how it's applied, because it kind of is a technical, hard process to get it applied and get it evenly layered. And I know there's a lot more cost involved in that application than something like nitriding or phosphate coating or nickel boron. It's a lot more expensive process, and it's a lot harder to do process and do it well. But I see them perfecting that even more to allow us to start seeing $100 chromed bulk carrier groups and stuff like that.
The problem is with chrome, you have to prepare the surface, and that's where the money's at. That's why when you look at Dan Young's bulk carrier groups, you don't see tool marks. You don't see where somebody was, half-assed getting it ready. And when you start cutting costs, you start cutting your number one thing is going to be your actual bar stock of your quality of steel you're using. And that's regulated. So you really can't do that. So you're going to cut your back on your labor rate. And that means not preparing the surfaces as well, which is going to cause the premature failure of the chrome. And what you really got to look at, some people are like, oh, you're using a chrome bolt carrier. And I know you've heard this before. What that's like ancient technology, but that same person will be like, oh, I want a chrome line barrel.
Right. Exactly.
I'm
And
just
that's what I'm
like,
saying. Is and chrome line barrels too. Like now, a lot of people I've read a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things that say nitrided barrels are just as good as chrome, maybe even better. Like because there's some accuracy stuff we could throw in there. But in my experience, I haven't ran enough rounds through a nitrided barrel yet, compared to chrome line barrels I have to be able to say one way or the sure from my experience. But still, chrome is kind of tried and proven, right? And it's really done nothing but get better, right? The chroming process has gotten better, and that's why I'm saying the chroming process. If you compare the chroming process today compared to like the late '50s, I mean, it's probably a lot better today, right?
oh
And
yeah, 100%.
and so imagine it, 10, 20 years from now, it could even be like even way better and easier and faster to put on and then so that's when I think we're going to see a lot more people going back to it. Like, oh wow, it's cheap now to put it to chrome a bolt carrier group. That means we can sell it cheaper, and it's still good quality and everything.
Well,
Like
yeah.
that's when I see everyone else jumping on board, and chrome bolt carrier groups are going to be the thing. It's going to be like it's going to blow up, and that's my prediction. So I could be 100% wrong. So in 10 years, if that didn't happen, come back and tell me I was wrong.
Exactly. And another thing, I think that we're going to see a shift in the M4 as far as it being a 14 and a half inch barrel. I think we're going to see the military start going back to a 16-inch barrel carbine to get the velocity of the rifle up, and I think they're going to start relaxing the twist rate as well, because I think that they've kind of overshot. They've
Well, the
gone to
ammo
a 1 in
technology, right?
7, and they're using a 14-inch barrel. And they've just, now they're in Afghanistan. They have got a lot more range that they're trying to make these rifles perform in. And it's not like in Iraq when you were furthest shot was a couple 100 meters. Now
Well,
they're stretching out the rifle, and they're not getting the performance that they need. And the soldiers are coming and yelling, "Hey, we need a rifle that's going to reach out at least 600 meters."
well, isn't that why
Well,
a lot of the Marines still carry 20-inch rifles? Right?
yeah,
Like,
that's why a lot of the Marines are still using A2 M16s instead of the M4, because it's just not effective out there.
and I don't
And
know if
by the
that's, and
way,
honestly, I
those
don't know if that's because of
those
cost or.
Marines are using 1 in 9 twist rate with the 62 grain penetrators, the M88, what is it? The M885,
M855.
the M855. That's what it is. Basically, they're using rifles that were designed to shoot the M193 55 grain boat tail, that's what I used. And they're using the heavier round, and they're not having any issues with it whatsoever. So it kind of throws out the window about the tightening of that bore. Everybody's wanting a 1 in 7, and they're using 1 in 9, and they're getting flat stability trajectory past 600 meters. So, I understand you cut down on the barrel length. You need to tighten up on the rifling to handle a heavier bullet. I understand that philosophy. And you're also trying to retain the bullet inside the barrel longer by adding more rifling. So you get a longer dwell time so that the rifle will cycle correctly. So it's kind of a give and take a situation. But now that we're in a different climate over there, I really think that we need to go back to the 16-inch barrel rifles. And that would give you a little bit more accuracy and a little bit more range. And another thing you were talking about was chrome lining barrels and losing a little bit of accuracy. Well, yes, this is true. However,
I think that's mostly true from like the 60s and stuff, where they had a harder time with that chrome lining process, because like the new barrels I've been getting from FN that are chrome lined outshoot non-chrome lined barrels. And you can definitely get a sub MOA chrome line barrel. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. If someone says it's not true, I got a gun here right now that if you're even a half-ass good shooter that has a chrome line barrel, it'll shoot sub MOA with 69 grain SMKs all day. And so I know that that whole chrome lining thing is kind of a myth, but there is some truth to it. I get it really depends on the barrel manufacturer, like who's chrome lining it, right?
yeah.
But I think that really is a myth from way back in the day when they didn't quite have that chrome lining process either down pat, or it was just so difficult. There could be fuck ups, right? Like it wouldn't lay down even. That's what I heard, is like that chrome wouldn't lay down even, and that's why like a lot of guys, like they were lapping bores and stuff. Like a lot of the target shooters back in the day were lapping all those chrome rifles barrels lapping the piss out of them.
Yeah. The whole thing is technology changes and people talk, and there's a lot of people that don't actually shoot but hear things, so they repeat them so they sound like they're knowledgeable. And basically I've run into this more times than ever. They'll be like, oh, this bolt failed at this many rounds, and I'll be like, so you put 5,000 rounds to it? And he's like, no, I just heard on the internet that's just. I'm like, well, that's one guy you've heard from. Let me know when there's 25 of them saying the exact same thing.
Right, an example size of one does not really tell us very much, right?
Because
Like,
everybody makes a turd product.
yeah,
You know,
everyone has a bad day.
even JP has sent out a barrel before, or maybe made a barrel before, maybe didn't send it out. That was garbage. But I guarantee you, somebody has gotten a garbage JP barrel before, or a Bartland barrel. Well, I probably not a Bartland, because they hand do everything. So it's like if they fuck it up, they're going to start over from scratch. And they better for what you're paying for it.
And that's usually what you should get when you're paying that higher price. Is it doesn't always come down to materials and stuff like that. A lot of times it comes down to the hands on with each individual part, and you're really paying for all that labor and all that quality control, right? And a lot of times when you're paying for a higher price item that looks just like this cheaper item, well, what you're really paying for is the labor and inspection and quality control before it went out the door.
Yeah. Like if you go to most barrel manufacturers that are big time and they do industrial barrels, they build thousands of them. You've got a guy with eye protection, ear protection on, standing at a machine all day long with an hour lunch break and a couple of 15-minute smoke breaks. And
Right?
basically, and he's turning out barrels from sun up to sundown. And basically, he knows that he's got to do so many to be within his target goal, so that he doesn't get somebody to talk to him. Why are you slowing down? So if that means that he lets one of those barrels go through when he knows the tooling chattered in the barrel, then that's what happens. That's for somebody else to figure out and send it back for a replacement, or that's for someone to just shoot and never know because they're not experienced, or they don't have the equipment to look down inside the barrel. But that's just how it goes. And when you get a more smaller company that's building a more high-end product, it's more one or two guys, their hands on the barrels. They're not turning out thousands, but the ones that they turn out are higher quality and a more consistent. And I mean, I've gotten ballistic advantage barrels that'll shoot the same hole, a bullet inside the same hole with a 3 round burst or a 3 round group, same hole, and it just opens up the hole a tad bit. And that's like one whole MOA at 100 yards. And I've had other barrels that'll shoot, 3 MOA at 100 yards. I mean, they're all very accurate for a 16-inch pencil barrel. 3 MOA is nothing to laugh at 100 yards. I mean, at 300 yards, that's 9 inches, or
Now,
that's still.
now, while we're on the subject of kind of like chroming and coating and stuff like that, do you think that in the next 20 years, 10, 5, 10, 20 years, that we're going to have better coatings than what we do right now as far as like nitride, nickel boron, titanium nitride, chrome lining, uh, stuff like that? Do you think that we're going to come out with something even better than that? Or do you think 20 years from now, uh, chrome, melanite, Cerakote, that's still going to be like the go-to, like top of the line stuff, like that. It,
Well, I would probably be eating my words if I said that we're not going to get better products. But you may get, or I shouldn't say better, we're going to get new products, most definitely. Now, will they surpass the products we have? Well, let's take a look at the products we have right now. Nickel boron, okay? Very slippery surface, very easy to apply to both aluminum, steel, stainless steel, and regular carbide steel, Uh, Problem is with it is it's thick. It's really thick. So anytime you're going to use that on a bolt or on a bolt carrier, you have to manufacture the carrier smaller, turn it down, because you are putting on a very thick nickel boron coating. And what will happen is the nickel boron eventually will start to come off, if not applied perfectly. And if it does, it gets low spots in it, which can cause, head spacing to change. So I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to nickel boron. I mean, if it's done right, I can appreciate it and use it. But in my opinion, it's not as hard as chrome. And I mean, chrome's over 60 Rockwell hardness. So
oh yeah.
basically, huh?
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah. It's not as hard as chrome or nitriding. Nitriding's a lot harder
Yeah.
than nickel.
And with the small experience that I've had with the nitrite coating, which has probably been a couple of years in shooting it, I don't feel comfortable really making a decision on it. I have had some nitrite get scratched very easy in the past, and I was like, maybe that was just the actual procedure of coating the barrels. They just seemed like it was thin. And the way I understand nitrite coating to happen, it actually penetrates the layers of metal, and it actually makes the barrel harder,
Oh, it
through
does,
doing the
yeah.
process.
And not only that, like when the black wears off, it's still, if it's done correctly, if the black wears off on your BCG or whatever, it's still nitrided. That black is just it's just think of it as a secondary thing that happens to that process. But that black actually isn't like the nitride coating. That's just something that happens to the steel during the nitriding process. It turns it black. But the nitriding, even if it looks like it's completely bare steel, it'll still be nitrided, and you can actually like leave it outside or something where like normal uncoated steel is going to rust on you, like where you could take a phosphate BCG that's scratched up real bad, stick it outside in the rain, leave it outside for a couple days, come back, it's rusted. The nitrided one's not going to be rusted, because it again, if it's done correctly. And I have had some nitrided bolts that were not done correctly, that you could tell, because when it's not done correctly, it flakes off instead of scratches off. Like that's how you really, and from my understanding, that's how you tell if it's really done correctly. If you start getting flakes of it off, that's when it's not done correctly. and it probably didn't penetrate the steel. And so that's what you got to watch for, is nitrating flaking off. And the same with nickel boron. If nickel boron's flaking off, it wasn't done correctly either. But if it just scratches, that's kind of normal wear and tear, as far as is what they'll tell you. And another thing with nickel boron is if you shoot a lot, you'll notice your nickel boron bulk carrier group turns like a dark gray. Like it turns like really dark gray instead of a bright shiny silver. It turns into this dark dull gray color, and eventually, like, that doesn't wipe off anymore. Eventually it stains your BCG, especially if you're running a lot of rounds through your gun. You're running your gun hard. You go home, you don't clean it that night, and you might not get back to you cleaning your gun for a couple days, or maybe not even cleaning until the next time you shoot. I mean, that BCG is eventually going to stain, and those carbon stain deposits fills all those little gaps, these microscopic pockets. That is what makes the nickel boron so slippery. But now you fill those pockets with carbon, which isn't necessarily as slippery, and then that can lead to more wear, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So from my understanding, and I don't have enough rounds through nickel boron BCG to say this for sure, but I do have ones that are completely dark gray. But from my understanding,
once you one and let me clean it in my ultrasonic cleaner.
Ultrasonic. Yeah, see, and I don't have an ultrasonic big enough for the carrier, just for the bolt. So that's what sucks. Is my ultrasonic's like this, like made for like glasses and stuff, right? But
have you used it on the bolt?
Oh yeah, I've used it on the bolt, and it still stains. It's but see, that BCG, I probably have, 4,000 rounds through that, and
right.
And it's the oldest nickel boron BCG. It's the first one I ever bought, and so it's the one I've used the most, and it's definitely fucking stained all shit. It's not coming clean. It doesn't. It's just got to that point because I also didn't clean that rifle and wipe it off every single time I came home after shooting it, and then that even makes it worse, and it just compounds. And once it gets that dark gray, from my understanding, it's a snowball effect to where it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse wear and tear, and not only that, it doesn't soak into the steel like the nitriding does. So once that nickel boron wears off in certain places, you essentially have just bare steel there, and now you have corrosion issues depending on your environment, right? But yeah, I nickel boron, I'd rather see nitriding. Personally, I'd rather have a nitrided BCG after my experience with both. I'd rather have a nitrided or even a regular old phosphate. I don't think
that's what I was just going to say.
Phosphate.
Give me a phosphate.
Yeah. So nickel boron's actually kind of, other than looks. Now, for the looks and all that, depending on like your rifle, having a nice silver BCG, yeah, that could totally make a rifle like stand out and look good. And for looks, yeah, I'm all for it. But as far as like wear and tear and use and all that, I mean, I'm at the point where I'm almost feel like nickel boron BCG is kind of like almost like a disposable item. It's just like, take it out, run 5,000 to 10,000 rounds through it, and throw it away. Whereas like a phosphate thing, I'm probably a phosphate BCG or nitrided BCG, I'm running it until it breaks. So I don't know. Let's see here. Okay, calibers. So I think that there's definitely going to be more newer advanced calibers, just like 22 Nosler, 224 Valkyrie, 6.8 SBC. I definitely predict more of those coming out in the next 10 years, even the next 5 years. More untraditional calibers coming out, and trying to maximize performance at, basically what you can fit in a GI magazine, right? And but trying to maximize the performance out of the AR-15 and get every little bit we can squeeze out of it. So I see not new calibers as new powders come out and new projectile designs and new technology, maybe poly case stuff, just ammunition in general. I definitely see ammunition in general for the AR-15 platform evolving.
Ammunition is going to be a big one. I am a big believer that this polymer case stuff is going to be the wave of the future. Um, Basically, you'll be able to shoot 100 rounds, and I want to be able to pay $3 for 100 rounds. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to. The primer will be part of the cartridge. It'll be formed in the cartridge when they press it. So basically, then they just add the powder and add the bullet. But I mean, they may even decide to go with some type of powderless charge, maybe an explosive uh, composition of some sort, like a plastic explosive inside the actual thing,
Almost
and
like a
the
caseless
primer.
ammo, right?
Well, that would work with caseless, but even if they were trying to make a cased ammo that was powderless, so that you didn't basically need, you didn't have to clean the weapon nearly as much, because as that if they were using like a C4 or something, some derivative of that, basically you would have a small amount of carbon inside the chamber and on the face of the bolt, but that would be it.
No,
Because basically the any carbon would just in the explosion would atomize and burn with it, because it'd be so much hotter burning.
now one thing, another thing I see coming in the future is more loophole AR-15s, and I'm just going to call them because that's what they are. They're loophole AR-15s in communist states like New York and California and all these places that are coming up with ridiculous
Maryland,
laws. Yeah,
Vermont.
yeah, coming up with ridiculous laws like you can't have this feature on your rifle and you can't have that and your rifle can't do this. All these companies are coming up, which I'm not saying I agree with, because I actually don't. I don't think these companies should be coming up with any of these products, because I think create I think that'd force more people to actually start fighting for their rights and not be so complacent. But a lot of these companies are coming up with ingenious ways, these different magazine buttons and loaders for fixed mags, and just all this stuff for the AR-15 platform. Like I saw this thing at Shot Show where you can load your AR-15 from the ejection port. You stick a mag in your gun, and now it's locked in your gun. It's now a fixed mag, and now you're loading it with the speed loader type device through the ejection port. So you just lock your bolt back, stick this device in your ejection port, and boop, now your 10-round mag's loaded. But I definitely see, as more of these stupid gun laws are passed, as more restrictions are placed on features of the AR-15, people coming up with creative loopholes, to get around these stupid laws to help people keep their AR-15s and stuff like that. Which, I can see why. I can totally see like some guy being like, dude, I got wife, kids. I'm not going to jail over something, a fucking magazine button. I totally get that, man. But I also get the point to whereas if if all these companies said, fuck no, we're not making nothing for it, like a lot more people are going to be like, oh, I got to start doing something. Then I got to start, fighting for my rights, voting, going to protest. I think it would definitely make people more proactive. So I definitely understand both sides of that story. Um, but what do you think about loophole AR-15s? Do you think more companies are going to jump on board making complacent or compliant parts, I should say? Or do you think that because I know some companies have straight out already come out and said like, oh, we're not making anything compliant for a compliant state. If we make free state guns. I've already heard a couple companies say that they're not making any compliant parts and take that stand, which I like. I like that stand. I like that philosophy. But what do you see about loophole AR-15s, David?
I just think that it's basically, I wouldn't I'm a big supporter of the men and women that just refuse to comply. I'm like, that's an unconstitutional law. And I'm a big firm believer of peacefully resisting. I'm like, I'm not putting anything on my damn gun to make it so that it's legal when the Constitution is very clear on this matter. And I mean, I'm not telling you to go out and do something illegal because that would be wrong. But I am saying for myself, if they ever made some law that I had to have a thumb hole or loophole, whatever the hell you want to call it, stock, I'm not putting one on my damn rifle. I didn't go to war so that people can infringe on my goddamn constitutional rights. Sorry, just not doing it.
No, and I wholeheartedly agree. And like I said, I see both sides of the story. I see some people being in a situation where they're like, you know what? I can fight this. I can do this. And I see other people being like, you know what? I really can't. Like, I cannot, my family cannot afford for me to go to jail right now, right? Because it'll affect my kids, everything. So I have to comply right now. That doesn't mean they're still not fighting or anything, but I definitely think if there was less compliant parts, more people would be doing something. There's definitely people out there who are not fighting or not doing anything pro 2A because they can simply just change a part on their gun, right? Like we
Right.
both know that exists. So
That's the
next,
easy way. It's the easy way out.
oh yeah, it
Oh,
definitely
well, I
is.
just got to do this.
It definitely is, and there are definitely people out there who are doing that, and those are the people who I would like to see fighting, right? Like let's get those people, you know, let's get them
Well, they
proactive.
should be the ones that understand it the best because it wasn't 6 months ago that they were making magazine buttons illegal, or it was maybe longer than that. But they had the first thing where you had to have a magazine button, where you couldn't just really readily eject your magazine and change magazines. You had to have like a bullet button. You had to take a bullet, shove it inside the button so that it would release your magazine. Then they ruled that those were illegal. Now you had to have a totally locked and secured magazine that doesn't release from the receiver. They just keep going and going and going until you're death from 1,000 paper cuts, it seems. Almost. That's why I'm like, okay, basically this rifle's been available to the civilian populace since 1968, and it's been on the market since before I was born. And now all of a sudden it's some evil thing. I'm just not buying it. That's why I think it's important for us to show as much as we can that these rifles are just like any other gun. Just because
Exactly.
they're black, they're not scary. I mean, if you take apart any other firearm, they've got some of the same components in each one. Some of
Yep.
them are calibered the same, some are lower, some are higher. But it's just, to single out a certain particular model and deem it unownable, it just goes against the Constitution, like I was saying before, and I just can't support that. And I won't support anyone that supports that. I don't care if it's a bunch of 16, 17-year-old children or if it's a bunch of 40-year-old men that are senators and politicians. It just that too many people have died for the rights for us to be able to have freedom of speech, freedom to keep and bear arms, freedom not to have the military come into your home. There's a lot of freedoms under the Bill of Rights that each one of us enjoy every day. And it's paid for on the backs of men and women who have served this country in the military. So I can't support anything that is unconstitutional. It's just it's just beyond me how people can support banning rights or overturning rights that they never had to fight for or defend for. They can just make a decision. Oh, this seems like this will fix the problem when they've only been on the earth for 16 years. Back when I was 16, I thought I knew everything too.
Another thing I see coming in the future of AR-15s is more takedown rifles. There's a couple companies out right now that make quick release barrel systems for the AR-15. There's a couple companies that are making folding stocks for the AR-15. There's even a prototype I saw of an underfolder stock for the AR-15 that folds like the old traditional AKs, and that was
Oh,
really neat to see. Yeah, and
on the barrel change. on the barrel changing stuff, Dad, what are they using, like a ratcheting system or a quick
Well,
release, like what you see on like a
one
larger
is like
machine gun?
a quick release system like that they basically slide it in, they turn it like a quarter turn, and then they like literally like yank on a lever that tightens it up. That so really just kind of like a I don't know what word I'm looking for to describe that fitment. But then I did see another one that was like a ratchet style system that was like he just basically kind of the barrel nut was kind of like part of the handguard, and he literally just like put it on the receiver and twisted this ratchet by hand and went click 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 and it stopped. And he was like, "That's it." And I was like, "Wow, like what kind of like torque do you got on that?" But like but they say it works, and I don't know. I haven't tried any of these myself, but I just know they're out there. I see them on Instagram and Facebook, and I see pictures of people building these little pistols and rifles with these, quick detach systems, and then they can change caliber super easy. So they only have to have one receiver set, but they can have a 300 blackout, a 5.56, a 6.5 Grendel. They can have all these different calibers on the same receiver set, and all they got to do is switch a bolt and a barrel, and then it's quick release. So they don't gotta, going through the time of, actually like installing a barrel. It takes 10 seconds. And I think that those kind of things, I think we're gonna see all those companies too. I see doing a lot of that stuff are like kind of small companies, and like it seems like that's the only thing that they do, right? Like this is all we make is this quick change barrel system. Well, I see some of the bigger companies starting to get on board with that, like Troy,
Starting to pay attention.
yeah, and be like, "Hey, guys, this is a thing. Guys are doing this to these pistols to make truck guns and stuff like that. We need to make a good system." And then I think they're even going to get even better when they have the kind of money that some of the big companies have, like military contract money, stuff like that, and they can invest that into R&D. And because I've heard some bad reports like about like return to zero stuff like that. So I don't think they have everything figured out, but I also don't know who the hell's installing it. Did this guy install it himself? Does he even know what he's doing? Was his receiver lapped? Like we don't know, right?
Right.
So we got to kind of take those reports of not returning to zero with a grain of salt, and we got to take the reports from the manufacturer that claims it does return to zero with a grain of salt, right?
What we need to do is call the manufacturer and get one of these systems and review it.
Yeah,
because
definitely. I want to build. I actually have two 9mm AR barrels right here, and one of them I am planning on doing not only the folding stock with the law folder,
right,
but I'm planning on doing either the Dolos or I can't remember what the other one, the quick change barrel system, what the other one was. Two main systems out. I think it's called Pantheon or Panther or something like that, and Panther or Pantheon, and then Dolos. And so I'm going to probably pick one of those two, and then I'm going to definitely try one out and see how well it works, and then I'll know for myself, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely wanting to know because I've messed around with a couple of guys that have brought in those breakdown, what are they called? 1022s.
Yep.
And those things are pretty neat, and they return to zero really well. I mean, and I was only shooting 100 yards with it, but that was pretty neat. I was really impressed with how Ruger had come up with that locking lug. And I was like, that's a neat little system. I wish somebody could do that with, an AR-15 that could be repeatable. And I guess they have. I would just I've heard about it, but I heard some bad news right off the bat that they had some issues that you had to re-zero it every time you put the barrel back on it. And that's one of the reasons why, who's that company that makes those single shot rifles that you can change out the barrels to a shotgun barrel?
New England Arms, and there's a couple of them.
No, not New England Arms. I'm thinking of the other one that's been around since the 70s, maybe even before. And Smith and Wesson bought them. They even have a black powder rifle that you can buy the barrel to.
Oh, like Thompson Center, or is it
Yes, Thompson Center.
Thompson.
Thompson Center. They used to make the pistols, remember, back in the 70s? that you could
Yep.
buy with the walnut wood stocks and pistol grip, and you could change out all the barrels to different
Oh yeah,
calibers.
like you could even get like 300 Win Mag and shit
Yes.
in those
Remember that?
pistols.
Remember that, dude? And I was like, who would be the fool to sit down on a pistol mat and shoot a 300 Winchester Magnum out of a pistol with a 12-inch barrel? I'm like, your hand is going to come off.
I've never seen any. Like I think the biggest caliber I've ever seen someone shoot in one of those was like a 22 250. There was a guy I knew who used to shoot bar. He would hunt. He'd varmint hunt using that little pistol, and he had a little bipod on it and everything. And I think it had like a 10 or a 12-inch barrel, something like that. And but that's the biggest caliber I've ever seen someone in person shoot out of one of those guns was the 22 250, and that thing still looked like it kicked pretty fucking good, man.
Well, that who is it? That contractor. They used to be owned by Israelis. The guys that make the Magnum Research. They actually are bought now by somebody here in the United States, correct?
I believe they are. Wasn't it like IWI or
It was the Israeli
I?
weapons.
It wasn't like IMI and then IWI. Like I get those.
IWI used to own them, and that's Israeli weapons something or other, incorporated or something to that. But they actually are based out of Israel, but somewhere here in the U.S. bought them. And I want to say, what is it? Car? Was it Car that bought them, or was Car bought by
I thought it was
someone
a
as
company
well?
in Michigan or Wisconsin or something like in the up by the Great Lakes. Like
Yeah, but they bought them, and then they came out with that pistol, the BFR, and I think it's supposed to stand for Big
oh,
FN
Magnum
Revolver.
Research. Magnum Research makes the BFR.
Yes, yeah, and it's a 4570 government pistol, and I was like, that would be like shooting a 458 SOCOM out of a handgun.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine. Now,
I couldn't
that
either. I would have that on display and be
now
like,
now the next thing I see coming in the future of the AR-15 is some of these high-end companies copying some of the budget companies. And I don't mean in cost, I mean on innovation and just basically copying them and improving upon some of their designs. And that has kind of been a trend I've seen in the shooting world going all the way back to the 90s with red dots and lasers. And um, I see some of these lower end companies, what people would call completely budget, like NC Star, like making innovative products before anyone else and making solutions to things that you don't even know you need or maybe don't even want, but someone might out there might want a rail that attaches to their AK on their front sight post or on like weird places, right? They make all sorts of weird attachment devices. And NC Star right now, man, like I hate to say it, like everyone thinks NC Star like they're garbage, but I've been buying some of their Vism line stuff lately from their Vism line, and their Vism line's like their higher end line, and I've been fucking happy as hell, man. I bought a pair of Vism scope rings. I went to go lap them. Like I buy scope rings that are $60 that I have to lap. These were perfectly aligned. I mean, I was super impressed, dude. And this was like a $12 pair of scope rings from these guys. And their cases, like everything in their Vism line, I've been super impressed by. And like one thing, they got this folding red dot for like Glock pistols or ARs or whatever that literally like folds down when you're not using it. And I can see so many guys who like the idea of carrying a red dot on their pistol or AR or whatever, but want it to fold down for compactness and sleekness and stuff when they're carrying it or putting it in their cases or, underneath their seat or whatever. And so I can see NC Star having this innovation. And like I said, I've seen these cheap companies like Tasco stuff innovate these products going all the way back to the 90s and be the first ones to do it, the first ones to make a real micro red dot and stuff like that way before the name brand companies do. And it's the name brand companies that follow suit and then they just they take that product and they just make it better, right? And so that's what I'm hoping for. Is I'm hoping some of these companies, the higher end companies, Aimpoint, Trijicon, they see that NC Star folding red dot and they're like, "Fuck, that's a great idea, man. We need to make a folding red dot for our handguns and for whatever, you know." Because I personally like that idea. Like, if I would never carry a red dot on a handgun, but if it folded up, maybe I might be like I'd be more open to it. I'll tell you that. Um, but you know, but I see them just doing all sorts of these cheap companies, these Chinese companies, budget companies. I see all these different little companies, you know, making all this cool, innovative shit. Some of it's even for airsoft. I saw an air. My friend posted this thing about an airsoft stock that not only like folded, but it like folded down and then folded sideways. So when it sat on the side of your up against your gun, it would sit below the ejection port and above the trigger. So it didn't cover the ejection port, and you could still like fire your gun. And I'm reading all this. You can still fire your gun while it's all folded like this for an AR. And I'm thinking this is cool as fuck. And I get down towards the bottom and I find out it's for airsoft, and it looked just like an AR-15 stock and buffer too. Like it looked like it would still fit. I want to use it. I'm not going to buy that to put it on it. And I was just thinking, man, someone needs to copy that exact thing for a real AR and make it work. And I would buy that because it was just the coolest holding stock I've ever seen. And so I see these airsoft companies and budget companies making cool, innovative shit, and then the high end companies following suit, just like I have for the last 30 years, and basically copying them. Whereas the budget companies seem to get a lot of flack for copying the high end companies sometimes. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's these budget companies that are the true innovators, and it's just not till the R&D comes into play of the bigger companies that an actual decent product comes out of it. Right? I'm not trying to say these budget products are decent or you should buy one or anything or they even work. I'm just saying that they have an idea and they don't quite perfect it maybe, and then the high end companies come along with the actual money to actually perfect that idea. And I see a lot of that happening, especially with that folding red dot sight. I think we're going to see a couple more folding red dot sights come out within just the next 5 years that fold down just like that NC Star does. Uh, and you know, and we're going to kind of have NC Star to thank for that. Honestly, you know, if Aimpoint comes out with a cool arm, if Trijicon comes out with a cool RMR type, you know, red dot that folds down, you're just gonna have to send a thank you letter to NC Star. I'm just saying. What do you think? What do you think about that, man? Like, what do you think about the high end companies copying some of these budget companies and stuff as far as innovation goes? Like, you know, like, oh man, like folding red dots, that might be a thing. Like,
I think that a lot of these companies that are some of the lower end companies that they're basically they don't have such a large customer base they can draw from and sell the same old stuff every year with just maybe a couple upgrades or maybe a couple of new release products. They've got to constantly push the limits of technology to be even caught a glimpse of. So that's why I think a lot of these lower end companies are experimenting with cutting edge stuff. And then later you see these other companies with bigger pockets, deeper pockets, pick up on this idea and finish it. Because what they can do is they can put the money into the development of chip technology, diode technology, and stuff that these smaller companies can't. And like, say, for instance, Vortex or Loophole, they look at something that somebody's offering and they see how it's doing, and then maybe they will pick up on it. Maybe they'll just buy the patent, and you'll see this and they'll pick up on them and they'll start coming out with their own line that is based primarily on the idea of this smaller company, but they just couldn't complete it with a product that actually worked repetitively. But I think as you see technology advance, I think you'll even see some of these smaller lower end companies starting to master the technology part because it won't cost as much for them to do that.
Oh yeah, like I saw a thing the other day, like a Bushnell has a front sight, a folding front sight out with a built-in laser in it. So now you can have a folding front sight on your AR, and there's a laser built right into the base of that front sight. So if you know whether your sights are backup sights or what, like it doesn't matter, or primary sights, you now have a laser that whenever you want, that you could set for a real close 5 yard zero while your rifle might be zeroed at 100, right? You could zero your laser at 5 yards or something for close range stuff, off that laser. Uh, or if you have a scope on your on your gun, then you might want a laser, right, for close quarter stuff, right? Because because it might take too long to throw off your scope and flip up your sights, stuff like that. So I'm like, dude, so now I don't have to have an extra laser and a front sight on my gun, like it's built into one little package. And I don't know if it works well. I've never seen it, but I think that's a cool idea. And I see other companies might be like, hey, let's put a laser, maybe even a flashlight. Let's put a laser and a flashlight into a sight, or let's combine some stuff. Let's get some weight down. There's a rail out right now called the Illuma Shark rail, I think, that has built-in lights into the front of the rail, and it has like 3 built-in lights or 2 built-in lights into the rail, like one on each side, maybe one on the top. I can't remember if it had 2 or 3, but it had these lights inside the front rail that were your lights, and they were bright ass lights, like 200 lumens, 400 lumens. I can't remember. Yeah, they were bright LED weapon light type things, but they were built into the rail. So now you don't have this extra bulk hanging off the side of your rail. You know what I mean? And those handguards are super fucking expensive. God, when I look, they're probably cheaper now, but when I looked at them, I think they were like almost $500 or something for the handguard. And but it comes with those lights, So when you go look at a good weapon light like a Surefire, though, and then you go look at a high quality rail, you could easily be at the 500 mark, right? Yeah. So but I don't know how good a quality this stuff is because it hasn't been proven yet, and at least I haven't proven it to myself yet. But I see innovation like that, and more companies. Hey, let's put lights in our rails. Let's put lights in our sights. Let's combine some things, save on some weight. Like let's compact the gun, make it sleeker, slimmer profile. I see a lot of innovation like that coming in the next 10 years. I really do. Almost kind of like kind of like Star Wars guns, man. Like, if you look at Star Wars guns, they're always like real compact and sleek, and everything's kind of like, even if they have lights on them, it's not like some big light hanging off the side of the gun. It's like built into the gun and stuff, and and yeah, I see everything kind of becoming more of a smaller, lighter, slimmer, sleeker package, as we combine all these features on our guns, and I just like cars, cars, like a lot of things have gotten like that, like everything from video game consoles to cars, like everything gets sleeker and lighter, and that's just the way a lot of things tend to go. And I definitely see the AR platform going that way, and I could definitely see in the future, you know, AR-15s being like a pretty common fight. Like right now, a 5-pound AR-15 is considered a lightweight AR-15. And even a 7-pound AR-15, some people consider a lightweight AR-15 because of some of the shit people put in their guns. But but like a 5-pound is usually, and I consider like I think in the future 5-pounds might be like close to the norm. Like because there's guys right now who are building 3-pound AR-15s, right? So
they're running polymers and stuff, and I'm interested in doing one of those titanium. I've seen these new ones that are all skeletonized where you can see all the way through the receiver, like around the mag. Well, you can see through it, and that looks amazing. And they're supposed to be like twice as strong as an aluminum one, but they are pricey. You got some chunks of change into the receiver set, and but yeah, I definitely see advancements, and I was wondering when they were going to do that with the hand guards, because I was like, for years I was like, man, these LEDs, even if you went all the way around the end of the hand guard, you could put out easily close to 600 lumens, and have a really good setup, and it wouldn't take up any space at all. All you would have is like a battery compartment somewhere on the handguard. You'd have to put, either rechargeables. That's what I would have done, is just put a plug, waterproof plug that you can plug it in and recharge the batteries on it.
Now, another thing I see in the future of AR-15s is people coming up with their own innovations. We are living such a lucky time right now where we have computers and AutoCAD and we have 3D printers that are affordable, where I own my own 3D printer. I have a 3D printer. It's not something that's like mysterious. And guess what? I only paid like $350 for it. And so it's not like some astronomical. It's not like buying a CNC machine, right? You want to buy a CNC machine, you're fucking investing $100,000. But but someone can buy a cheap 3D printer, come up with their own creation and their own model. It doesn't even have to be like a working model, just basically like a prototype, just to show what it is, and then go sell that to a high end company. Look, this is my idea. This is what it looks like. This is what you should make. And I see things like that going on, and that being a future, or people taking those 3D printing their models, stuff like that, then taking it to a local machine shop, saying, I want this water jet cut out of stainless steel. I want this CNC'd. I want and paying a programmer to actually program it in, and making their own fucking, their own specific thing, that's completely unique just to their gun. Like, and their own handguard, their own, receiver set, their own stock, whatever it may be. I definitely see people creating their own stuff and creating stuff to basically sell to companies or give ideas to companies. Hey, you guys should make something like this. And I see the future going that way too, because people are already doing that. Like, people are already making their own guns on 3D printers. I mean, and their own designs of guns, right? Like, and holsters, and I mean, just everything. And a lot of people are using that to prototype their stuff out now. And with that tool that we have, gosh, it is just an awesome time, because I love it. I'm really bad at it, but I love it. I love sitting down on my 3D printer and sitting there and trying to create a new grip and a new texture and a different angle, and just and just messing with stuff, making mag holders to go on top of my safe that stand like mag stands to hold my mags, 3D printing them and making them all myself, and just and yeah, like for me, it's about the third time's the charm thing. The first two things I usually make are like off and dimensional wise, so then I got to make adjustments. But by the time I print it the third time, it's usually about really good. About the third time, I usually have it down pretty good, and so I get something out that seems to work.
Is that how you're making the Accu wedges?
Yep, it sure is.
So basically, what do you send me, like 3 of them, and I pick the one that fits correctly?
No, mine are all hand fit, dude. So mine are all slightly oversized, and all you do is just take a little bit of sandpaper to it, and just you're gonna custom fit it yourself.
Oh, okay.
And but I do have 2 different sizes. I'm going to send you, depending on what receiver you have, what style receiver you have in the rear. But they're all hand fit. Like, that's the best way to do it, is just to hand fit. Is everyone. So, and it only takes a second to rub it on some sandpaper, stick it in. Oh, I need a little more, because I got them really close, but you're probably gonna have to remove a little material.
Yeah.
And but I made
that's pretty cool. What
pistol grips.
What's the material? Can you 3D print like titanium and steel and stuff like that?
Not mine. Mine. See, now those 3D printers are a lot more expensive. The ones that like print copper and steel wound stuff that has that steel fiber stuff in it, and those are a lot. My stuff's just all like ABS plastic and stuff. Mine's
okay.
Just,
where do you buy the plastic that you feed the machine?
Actually, when I bought my machine, I got the very first machine I got. Mine has a built-in camera on it, right? So while it's printing in my bedroom, I can be in the front room on my computer, and I can watch the piece while it's being made, like in the little corner of my screen. So in case it fucks up, right, I can go and catch it
Right.
real quick and fix it. But the camera didn't work on the first one I got. So they sent me like 8 boxes of that filament in all sorts of different colors. And they told me to keep that filament. And then when they sent me the replacement, it also came with 8 more boxes. So I still have the filament that I originally got. And so I haven't had to buy any yet, dude. But you can buy it on Amazon. I researched it on Amazon, and that seems about the best place to buy it. But I print all my prototype stuff in white usually, and then like the final product will either be in black, red, blue, and I think I have red, black, blue, white, and gray. So
Have
pretty
you
much
tried
everything
to
prints
print?
in black.
No, I was going to ask, have you tried to print a Magwell extension for the Glock 19?
No, but I think Big Gunner 81 did on YouTube and on Instagram. Big Gunner 81, he's on gunchannels.com too, which anyone listening doesn't know about gunchannels.com, come over to gunchannels.com, sign up. It's free. All sorts of good people, gun shows, all sorts of good stuff going on over there. But Big Gunner 81, I think it was for a Glock 19. Maybe it was for a different Glock or an M&P, but it was for some handgun. I saw him printing off Magwell extensions and working on that. And he got a 3D printer too recently, and he's printing off. He's getting really into it like I did when I first got mine, like printing off mag holders and all sorts of crazy shit. Like, you know, I made cookie cutters shaped like AK-47s and AR-15s. So when my wife makes cookies, she can make me AR-15 cookies and stuff like that. And I've made just all sorts of crazy shit. And sometimes my wife will come to me and be like, "Oh, hey, I need a piece that does this or some kind of special hook or something. I'll just go print it up. Okay, it's like this, you know." And it's really cool. Yeah. So and it's depending on what software you're using, it can be for someone who's not computer smart like me. They do make it pretty easy, and you know. But like I said, for me, I got to print everything about 3 times before I get it right, before I'm happy with it. So the first 2 I usually consider like those are like the prototypes where I got to adjust the sizing and dimensions slightly, stuff like that, and or maybe the temperature depending on how big the product is, or my basically how fast my machine's laying down material, how fast it's moving. The bigger the product, the faster I have to have it move. The faster it moves, the not as accurate. So there's all sorts of these like little variables you got to play with. But for the most part, it's just fun to play with. It's something neat. And when you actually create your own grip and bolt it on your AR-15 and it works, or smack it with a hammer and it doesn't break, and you're like, oh, fuck, you know, this thing's pretty strong. It works. You know, it's just kind of cool is to make shit like that. And, you know, but I see other materials too. I see, like, I remember, like, you know, guy in the 90s, okay? I remember in the 90s still, like, early, mid-90s, Glocks were just starting to actually really get popular. They really were. I mean, and a lot of people were still against them. And a lot of people were like, oh, the plastic cheap pistols, da-da-da, and plastic pistols are junk, polymer guns are junk, da-da-da. And, well, we know how that turned out, right? And, you know, and like everyone makes polymer frame guns nowadays. Like fucking everyone makes a copy of a Glock, right? And I see the same thing with AR-15 polymer receiver sets. Everyone, oh, they're junk, da da da. And granted, yeah, the first couple ones were junk, but if you look at the first polymer framed guns before Glock, well, they were kind of junk too. You know what I mean? So, you know, Glock was kind of like the first one to come along and do it right. And I see the AR-15 polymer lower thing being right there. They're just waiting for that first company to come along and do it right. And I think we actually have that now. I think ATI is the one that actually came out finally and was like, hey, this is a fucking polymer lower that's actually worth the damn. And
That's the one where they
the
put
hybrid
steel
with the
inside.
steel. Yeah. And that's all reinforced and stuff. And I think they're the first ones to actually come out and make one that actually works, that's actually decent and that lasts, and that's, you know, that pass actual mil spec tests as far as like buffer tube strength and shit like that. And I mean, you can drop it on you can actually mortar it. You know, if you have a malfunction, you can actually mortar it, not be afraid to mortar it. You can shoot it from the hip without having the stock supported by your shoulder and not have to worry about that rear tower breaking off of the lower. and stuff like that. So which I've all done on mine. I have 3 of these things, these receiver sets, and I think they're the first company to come out and actually do it right. So now that they've kind of set the benchmark, um, in my eyes, I definitely see more companies coming out now, with polymer lowers and stuff that are going to be decent and actually work and not break. And is it going to be as good as steel or aluminum? Well, no. Is a polymer framed handgun as good as a steel or aluminum handgun? I guess that's a personal choice. In my mind, it's not. But but it,
Lightweight.
yeah, there's definitely advantages, right? There's definitely advantages to a polymer framed handgun, but I don't ever think of a polymer framed handgun as something that my grandson or his son, my great grandson, might inherit and down in the family line one day. I don't think of a Glock that way. My 1911, I think of it that way. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So,
right.
so that's what I'm
Plus,
saying is
you
I
don't even know how long has Glock been making guns. It was 84 when they
80,
first released.
86, I think.
Well, that's when it came to the public. But
Pub-
84 is when they made the gun for the what is it, the Australian Army. They had a 17,000 gun
Austrian?
order.
Was it
Austrian.
Austrian? Yeah.
Yeah, and he actually made that order, and that was in 84. And basically that so 84, 94, 2004, 2014. So that was only 34 years ago. So basically, what is this polymer going to look like in 100 years? I mean, is it going to stay the same or is it going to get
No,
brittle?
it does. It does because it loses its UV protection and it loses its oils. It basically dries up over time, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why plastic gets brittle. Especially the more out in the sun it is, stuff like that, the more brittle it's going to get. And they lose that UV protection as you wear them down with your hands. And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
tell people not to stipple their pistols because that's basically what they're doing is they're accelerating that aging process and making the gun more brittle. But that I definitely don't see it holding up because I've already seen Gen 1 Glocks that have been shot a lot, right? But not even like 10,000 rounds, okay? Whereas there's a Glock that's only a year old that has 10,000 rounds, and you compare that to a Glock Gen 1 with 10,000 rounds just because the age of it, you're like, oh, like, man, this thing's like, yeah, you can definitely tell that it's not the same gun. And I don't think that polymer is ever going to be 100-year-old gun that you're going to be like, oh, this is 100-year-old Glock. I can still carry it as a carry
Yeah.
pistol like you can a 1911 or a lot of other steel framed guns and stuff like that, or even aluminum.
Yeah.
Aluminum guns I would trust to last 100 years maybe. A Beretta 92 or something like that. Like I could see my great grandson inheriting one day and stuff like that. My guns, but I don't think my Glock is probably going to be around or even be worth a damn. In 100 years.
I would like to be able to hand my kids down a Beretta 92, except I don't have one.
But I see like carbon fiber, titanium. Um, like the one gun I built here, like has pretty much like all titanium parts. My modular gun, titanium muzzle brake stuff. Like I see it just titanium, carbon fiber, hybrid mags, just all sort of magnesium. Just to save on weight. I see more unconventional materials being used. Definitely more polymer though. Um, to save on cost and weight. And I definitely see, they actually have a jig out that you can pour your own polymer lowers. You buy the jig basically, and you buy the mix, and you mix up your own polymer resin, and you pour it into this fucking mold, and pop it apart, and now you have a polymer lower, and you can sit there and pop them out like candy. It's like think of it as kind of like doing an 80% lower type thing, but you're doing it from scratch, just literally from like a liquid mix of polymer, and then now you have a polymer lower, and I think they even have a metal buffer tube insert in them. But but stuff, just innovative stuff like that, materials. Um, I definitely see with the gun laws getting more restricted too. A lot more 80% AR receiver options and ghost gun machines. Those little small. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Ghost Gunner, but it's a little tiny small desktop CNC machine that's made to do nothing but mill out 1911 frames and AR lower receivers. And
Oh,
you just stick an 80% 1911 frame or an 80% lower into it, and hit a button, and it's pretty much just all automatic. And it's just a little mill top machine. It costs about $1,600, so they're kind of expensive. But
that ain't bad.
it ain't bad. But there's upkeep on the motors and all this stuff, and like from the guys I've talked to is that you can really do about a dozen on it before you gotta like start replacing some of the belts and shit, and like I'd actually like maybe have to replace a motor or screw with it. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah.
and because they lose they're not a big heavy duty machine, so they lose their like accuracy and their,
Right.
you know,
You
and
got to
they
be
run on like
calibrated.
rubber bands. Yeah, you got to calibrate it and all this shit, and so, but I don't know. That's just what I've heard. So, but I heard you can do about a dozen before you got to start fucking with it. And
Yeah,
then,
I think I'd
it's
rather just go ahead and make, um, go ahead and put like 10 grand down on a real CNC machine and
right.
turn them out and pay for the machine. And then by the time you got to bid it, put new access bits in it, that's about, you got a 4 access bit. That's about 16 grand just for the bits. But you can make up the difference by just cutting out things you can sell.
And I see trigger technology advancing too, because we have these binary triggers, and we have these
Yeah.
that digital trigger.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that digital trigger that like has a digital reset.
Hey, hold that thought. I'm going to be right back. Talk amongst yourself. Here, I'll pick a
I'm gonna
topic
go answer
for you.
questions. I'm gonna go. I'll turn this into the question and answer time. I'm gonna go back to the chat and read some of the questions.
Yeah, let's let the viewers know about what we're doing about question and answers as well. You
Oh yeah,
told
I
me to let you
forgot. Yeah,
know.
so at the end of every show, guys, like this is when we're gonna go back through the chat at the end of every show and answer anyone's questions or read off their comments, stuff like that. We're gonna be doing that at the end of every show. So, uh, Patrick says, "Hi guys, I did an AR-15 build recently with the G-Wax Poly Lower and Faxon 18-inch 223 Wild Pencil Barrel. It's an awesome gun. I patterned it off the in-range TV WWSD rifles. Now I have seen those rifles, Patrick, and that G-Wax lower. I will I'll take back what I said about ATI being the first one to do a polymer lower right. G-Wax was the first one to really do one right that was worth a damn. The problem with that is you're kind of like stuck with the grip you get. You're stuck with the stock you get. But still, they were the first ones to. I'll give them that credit. They were the first ones to do a polymer lower that was worth a damn. They really were. I really like those lowers, and those in range WWSD rifles are badass. And Squib says he's at work running a shop vac and he can hear me just fine. Patrick, Squib wants to try a Faxon barrel. Those Faxon barrels are nice. They are. They're a good barrel company. Higher. Patrick has the 5R rifling in his pencil barrel. And Squib says night vision didn't come down into the civilian market until the cost came down and the imaging became more clear. And I think you are exactly right about that, Squib. Patrick says, I think ARs will have poly lowers with lightweight barrels with ammo that doesn't use brass cases. Like poly cases are all copper poly coated bullets. I agree with that, Patrick. Patrick says, I'm sure they are trying to get phaser rifles and handguns like Star Trek and Star Wars. I'm sure we'll see that in my lifetime. I don't know I've watched some videos on that, some actual physics videos about like directed energy weapons. And what we have right now are more like directed sound energy weapons. But from like what I've read is like we're still like 100 years away from like a real directed energy beam. Like we have lasers right now, and we have sound. That's it.
Yeah, you're talking about like a
The
particle
lasers are so
projection
big.
cannon.
Yeah, these lasers are so big, these lasers that they have on these planes to shoot. Because I watched this whole documentary on directed energy thing that they're talking about, and these lasers that they have on these planes are pretty fucking huge. And these ground ones, I mean, they're huge and they take a shitload of power. And we just don't have the technology to have that in a handheld thing right now. But maybe a projected hearing weapon in a handheld, maybe that's a maybe. The solution. Oh, let's see. Squib says the solution to making BCGs with quality and affordability both is simply volume. Make more and the unit costs go down. You are exactly right, Squib. Volume does definitely help with that.
Yeah, but it also sometimes promotes quality control issue problems.
Yeah, because then now you have to go to batch testing everything, because now if you're HTMP testing everything, then then you might not be able to get that cost down as much. I don't know. Also, in addition to complacent factory workers, they are sometimes drunk or high on the job and dumb as a bag of hammers. Yes, they are. I have heard stories. I'm not going to say about what company, but I have heard stories of a very prominent manufacturer of weapons, of all sorts of different types of weapons, that those guys have been like caught many times drinking on the jobs, and customers have gone into their shops and there's like literally open Budweiser's beers and shit in the middle of the day,
What
sitting
are
on
you
their work
talking about?
sitting on their
I
work
need
benches. But that same company also has a bad reputation for quality control. So,
I think I think I know why.
Rupin says, "Yo, I believe Magnum Research was in it. Yep, Squib, yep, he's right. Let's see. AR Stoner is just as cheap. AR-15s are all right. Light. How much lighter do you want them? Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. I have a gun. I have an AR-15 that weighs 5 pounds, 10 ounces, with a fully loaded 30-round mag. And to me, this gun feels like a feather. I mean, I swing this gun around, and it's just like, and there comes a point to where if a gun's too light to me, it almost like shakes in my hands. And so there's actually like a point to where I would actually prefer more of a 7 pound rifle, maybe 6, 7 pound area. Whereas when I start getting down to this 5 pound area, it's kind of actually getting too light. And I can just imagine a 3 pound AR, man. And I think the lighter you go, I think a lot of times the lighter you go, you're going to be losing something when you do that, right? So whether it's accuracy or strength, or you're going to be trading that lightweightness for something more than likely you are. So you're going to probably be giving up something for that lightweight. So let's see here. Austrian 1600 plus 200 shipping. Yep. No, you guys have it all wrong. Guns of the future will be made of transparent aluminum. Actually, they have transparent aluminum now. I watched the fucking thing on that, and it's a real thing now. So, bam, Scotty was a fucking genius, dude, and we didn't even know it. But like, transparent aluminum actually exists, and you can make a cheaper form of transparent like aluminum using aluminum foil. You can take like aluminum foil and heat it up and make it transparent and see through it. In case you didn't know. Let's see. No, you guys have. No, see, that's not a lot. I spilled baked beans in theaters while watching Cars 2.
What was that?
I spilled baked beans in theaters while watching Cars 2. And I okay. Rupin, I have 2 Faxons, love them. Let's see, Little Boat.
Faxon makes good stuff.
Yeah, they
DPMS, when they were bought by Remington Outdoors, aka Freedom Group, back in the what was it? Was it 2000 or 97, 98? But anyways, when they bought them, when they bought DPMS, they started using DPMS, started using Faxon bolt carrier groups. and I believe barrels as well. I'm not sure on the barrels, but I know they were using their bulk carrier groups. They build a very high quality product, both their barrels and their bulk carriers. Faxon has been making barrels and bulk carrier groups for a lot of the manufacturers of firearms for years, along with let's see, who's the other one that does it? Criterion. They make a really decent barrel as well.
Actually, Criterion barrels are actually really, really nice. They make some of the high, and they make barrels just for like a lot of guns, not just AR-15s. Or some manufacturers are really focused maybe on AR-15s, AR-10s, and maybe like Remington 700s, right? Like they'll, and that's it. But Criterion makes, I think they even make barrels for like the M1 Garand and shit, or like Mini 4. They make barrels for like, I know, probably like a dozen different guns. So um, they do have a lot of options out there compared to some other manufacturers, and their barrels are pretty much known to always be sub MOA. Um, let's see here. Squib says, I work at a factory, so I know about the people that work at them. The quality is because of the bad workers. And see, and I kind of have to agree with that. I've worked in a very, very high-end, high-performance machine shop dealing with high-performance vehicles, motors, stuff like that. And, we're talking like we're just like a set of heads, we're $5,000-6,000 just for a set of heads. And the machining that went into, porting and polishing and doing all these heads. And the quality control, whenever there was a fuck up, like we all like whenever someone called us up and they're like, yeah, we got your shit in the mail, I went to go bolt it on and it's not right. Like we always knew like who the fuck it was. Like we'd walk over there and be like, Chris, like, did you do these heads? Yeah, I did these heads. Well, guess what? The customer's calling and he's fucking pissed. You better get over there on the phone and chill him out and tell him you're gonna fix the shit. And but like we always knew, and it was because of the bad employees. Like every fucking time, like it was because of the bad employees, the employees that would, slack off, and the ones that get half the work as everyone else, and then would bitch about how you know they did the most work and shit like that.
Oh yeah, I love that one. It's always the employee wanting to say he's done the most work, and then yeah, but you've also got the most callbacks. I'm like, yeah, you made the most. Like, say you're doing intakes, you made the most intakes. Unfortunately, half of them had to come back to be repaired or fit or replaced.
Yep. Or the customers just weren't happy and they didn't send us back. They didn't send them back, but then they went around talking shit like, "Oh man, I bought headers from them and they were fucking garbage."
Yeah,
Right? Like, you know what
exactly.
I
And
mean?
word of mouth in these small industries, like in the car industry or in the firearms industry, you get a bad name on about your company and you're done.
No, you are exactly right.
So what are the viewers out there? How many viewers do we have tonight? Dead?
Uh, Not that many tonight because I think we were going up against some pretty. I think the Gun Collective went live. I don't know if Yankees live. There was a live lobby. There was another show going on. There was like a bunch of shows going on, and I think when I started this, there was like Attack Daddy, like Steve, like Louder with Crowder. Like there was like a bunch of good shows on like going live tonight. So, but like I said, this is for reference, man. Like this is for people to come back on. And
Oh, I was just curious. I don't see how many people are actually in here.
right now we got 5 watching. So I don't know how many have watched like tuned in total. And
Okay.
like sometimes when I watch these live shows, right? Like I gotta go do something. I might have to go pick up a kid, go do something. So what I do is I pause the show, and then that drops that live viewer down, right? And then they don't
Right.
come back for an hour, and then they hit start, right? And now they're an hour behind or whatever, but they're
Right.
still watching it. So, but then it doesn't show up as live viewers when they do that. Like
Uh,
whenever you pause and get more than like a minute behind or whatever, it no longer counts as like a live view or some shit. I think.
oh, okay. somebody had to come up with some way to do that, I guess. I pity that person. I pity those the person had to make that
I don't know,
all
dude.
right,
Trying
we
to
need you to
understand
figure out a
YouTube and how it
way.
works, it can be really, really fucked up. Oh, see, Squib
So
says, yeah, like sometimes he's typing too fast because of work and he's on break and stuff, and that's why he has fat fingers. And like, well, guess what, dude? Like, he still types better than I fucking do, and I don't even got loud machinery going, and I'm not even in a rush, and he still types better than I do. I'm pretty fucking illiterate when it comes to typing like that.
oh yeah, I use the voice text,
Oh
and
God,
that's
that's
gotten
even
me,
worse.
dude, it's gotten me in trouble so many times. I was talking to a customer the other day, and I was saying something, and it came out absolutely horrible. I was saying something like, well, we'll get the rifle back in here, and I'll take a look at your bolt and make sure that's the problem. And basically, it came out like, you get the rifle back in here, and I'll look at your balls and make sure that's not the problem. You're like, well, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. The next text is, I apologize very much. My voice text acted stupid.
That voice text is really bad, man. Especially if you have any kind of like slight accent or slur or stutter or anything like that, right? Like, or if you just have like loud background noise on in the background, like you're in a
Yeah.
car with like wind noise and shit. Oh yeah, dude, that has fucked me up so many times. I don't even use it anymore. I actually deleted it off my phone, and just so I couldn't use it because it kept just dude. I would say I'd be on gun channels and say something in the chat and it would come out like a different fucking language. Like it wouldn't even make sense. It would be like, and the pudding is blue because it's great. Like fucking like what? People would be like, what the fuck are you saying? Like what?
They're like, hey, that dead horse, dude, I think he's a functioning alcoholic. Because it was spelt perfectly. It was just
Yeah,
complete
it's
gibberish.
all like the grammar and capitalizations all fucking perfect and shit, but it just makes no sense. It's like what?
Is Rupan on right now with us?
Yes, he is.
What's up, Rupan? Okay, product. Uh, we're gonna push products right now. Have you come
Okay.
across anything that you find really cool that you've purchased in the last month or so that you found out you couldn't live without?
Yeah. I've got kind of on a kick lately, on an AK-47 kick to get my AK-47 finally done, right?
Right.
And because I've had it now for like a year, and the only thing I've done to it is a grip, right? And so it's just like fuck, I haven't done anything like what I wanted to do with this rifle. So I'm like kicking myself in the ass right now. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pause on my ARs for a second. I'm just gonna focus on my AK because it should be really fast and easy. Like all I need is a stock, a handguard, and I gotta straighten the front sight post or the front, the front sight piece. It's canted front sight, right? So I gotta. That's all I need to do is like those three things, and then it's done, right? And then I don't. Then it's just out of the way, and it's just done the way I want it. So I'm like, so I've been watching a shitload of videos about AKs because I don't know anything about AKs, dude. I don't like I don't know anything about AKs.
Yeah, I
And
don't either.
yeah, so I've been watching a shitload of videos and asking a shitload of questions and getting a shitload of conflicting information. Like just and just so I've just been kind of like going through the process of sorting out bullshit from truth, you know,
Oh,
and
that's always fun.
yeah, especially when it comes to like an AK that's kind of its own variant, like regular AK shit doesn't quite fit it, right? So you always got to like modify whatever you put on it slightly. So then when you're like, hey, like, did you have any issues putting a stock on it? Da da da. And you're trying to get people to reply on you from forum posts from 4 years ago, and shit, and stuff. You're trying to get that info out of them because they're like, oh look, I put a fucking this stock on my AK, and they don't tell any information like, oh, I had to Dremel this, I had to grind that, I had to do that. Like, it's like, where's that good information?
What are you trying to do?
I got a Mac 90, Norinco Mac
Oh, you
90.
got a Norinco.
Norinco Mac 90.
Yeah, that's a
So
good weapon.
yeah, like when I decided I finally wanted an AK, like everyone told me like Arsenal or Norinco, like those are like the two main ones that people were like, those are like the best two AKs you can pretty much get. That was the most common answers, right? I'm not saying they're the best, but that was the two most common answers. Everyone I asked was like, "Hey, what's the best AK?" They were like, "Oh, Arsenal," or they said Norinco. So when I got a chance to buy a Norinco, from a guy who was the original owner of it from 1994, and mine was on the boat that was delayed after the ban took effect. And so there's like a whole story since mine was on the fucking boat and it had to actually like cross customs or something. They didn't want to let a whole shipment in, but then there was people who had already paid for them and all this stuff. There's like a whole story behind that, but like I think it was September of '94 or something, or some shit is like when they couldn't
Yeah,
even like, import them anymore, right?
yeah.
And mine was on the boat. Mine was
My
on the boat.
my
So
buddy
mine
got
was
one of
literally
those,
like the
dude.
very last. Mine was literally the very last fucking batch that ever made it into the United States. Like that's what mine is. And but it's like a thicker receiver, so like regular AK stocks don't quite fit, and it has a longer tang, like upper tang. So you gotta like, and the holes might not line up, so you got to do some shit with any wood stocks or plastic stocks you put on them. And
You
then
know what I put on there? You know the
what's
company
that?
Voltar?
Yeah.
Get one of their rifle stocks that give you a AR-15 M16 buffer tube, and basically throw you an M16 AR-15 stock on there. Just a little collapsible stock, like a bare minimalist stock. That's what I've got on my Romanian SAR-1. I put one of those on there, and that would be fairly simple to do on if you're not exactly pattern correct.
Well, what I think my plan right now is I think I'm gonna do uh see that Rob Ski guy, AK Operators Union, he broke a Magpul Zukov stock and by like mortaring it or some shit, and he broke that like stock pretty fucking easily, right? But I know Magpul does make good shit, but that Zukov stock just like it looks like that kind of like a minimalist stock and it folds to the side and shit. So I like the idea of that Zukov stock, but I would really like to get some sort of folder for it. That's what I kind of really want. I think is a folder for it, so then it can be a more of a truck gun under the seat gun stuff like that, more compact. So a folder, and then I want to do some sort of like bottom handguard. I was looking at the Troy short rails, but I know those are kind of heavy. But maybe a Midwest Industries M-Lock one or something. But some sort of some sort of bottom handguard, and then for the top, I'm thinking about that Ultimac rail. So then I can put a little red dot or something on top of it. But then I'm like thinking about the Ultimac rail, how I've been holding the AK, like my thumb and stuff is up on that top handguard, not like a C clamp grip like those
Right.
guys who don't know how to shoot use, but my thumb's still up on the handguard. So then I'm all wondering, now am I gonna have to hold my hand all funny so I don't burn myself on this Ultimac rail? Is that gonna be an issue? Do I have to worry about burning myself on this thing or like
If it's
what?
metal, it's going to get scalding hot.
You know, well, it is a piston though, right? And doesn't it release all of its gases kind of like towards the front, so it should run cooler. But I don't
Well,
know.
yeah,
So
dude, but I've seen them catch. I've seen them catch wood, balsa wood grips on fire before from
yeah,
shooting
yeah.
AKs.
Oh, I
So
have
I
two.
mean, that's some
So
heat coming off of that. That your barrel comes right up, and it basically, what do they call that when it runs? The heat will run right from one barreled metal piece of metal right and elevate because hot air rises right into your gas tube. So both your gas tube on an AK-47, the piece that goes between the gas block and the receiver trunnion, they get very hot. I mean, it's 400 degrees at least. I mean, it'll fucking melt your hand.
yeah, see, and I just don't know, man. Like now, would it even be good? Like, would it if I got that gun hot, would it ruin my red dot? Like,
That's another problem.
Yeah.
What I've seen is the guys that put the piece of pick rails on the rear sight, or actually have the rear sight replaced with a mount that will accommodate a like a T1 or a like even a EOTech, and that way it keeps it closer to the ground.
Now, see, and I don't like that though. I do not like the idea of taking off the original sights. I like the idea of backup sights, man. I want that
Oh
option.
yeah.
Yeah, I that's a thing of my, like, all my guns have backup sights, dude. Even a gun that is nothing for hunting has a backup sight on it. You know what I mean? Like, I just love
Yeah.
sights on guns. Like, even a lot of my bolt action rifles are the versions that came with sights from the factory, and I've just added a scope base and a scope after the fact, right? But that they were more traditional rifles with actual sights on the gun still. So even my bolt action rifles, I like a pair of backup sights. I'm just a big thing. That's just a big thing in my book. But anyway, so I've been into an AK thing lately. But I bought a sight pusher, and I bought the oversized pins and the drill bit I need to correct my front sight to fix it canted. So I had to get a sight pusher. I had to get the pins and drill bit, and I had to get um, a uh, a special tool, um, a jig to actually align my front sight so I do it right. But luckily, I found the jig super fucking cheap on eBay, and I just bought one for $23. So hopefully it works good. But it's supposed to align my front sight base perfectly level. Um, you just put a level on top of this jig, and then it's like,
Oh, awesome.
yeah. So hopefully that works, and my front sight will be like, all nice and perfect and not canted, because that just kind of fucking bugs me. I don't know if you've ever had a gun with a canted front sight.
Oh, dude, don't even start. My SAR one, you got to remember, my SAR one was put together, or actually imported, I think, during the Clinton ban. So basically, it didn't have a threaded barrel, and it didn't have a bayonet lug on it. So basically, in the front sight post was leaning so far to the left that I had to push the front sight all the way. What was it? It was to the right to get it to. It was all the way left. Yeah, I had to push it all the way to the right just to get it to hit paper. So when I was like, you know what? I'm either going to sell this thing and get some money out of it, but I know I can't get nothing for it with this front sight like that. So I went down to Definitive Arms when Chase was right here in St. Petersburg. Now he's working with Copper Custom with Tim from the Military Arms channel at Copper Custom. He moved his shop from St. Pete, Florida to Indiana to be one of the head guys that does AKs there at Military Arms channel. Tim's partner and him and Chase, they all own a gun shop together there in Indiana. And basically my guns were the last ones he did. But he basically went through the entire gun for me, and he straightened everything up and basically threaded the barrel for me, and went ahead and what else did he do? Oh, so he put a slanted brake on it, a flash suppressor, or actually it's a brake, slanted brake, the common ones found on those year 7.62 by 39, and then redid all the trunnions, went through the entire fire control system, and basically what are they where's my freaking brain, coating, phosphorus. Basically, what do they call that when they do the, not a phosphorus bolt, but the god damn it,
Fluorescent?
my brain is, what is it?
Fluorescent?
No, not fluorescent. Like when you refinish a gun.
Oh, Like bluing or like what do you mean by
Not bluing. It's almost like a phosphate coating. They put it on military hardware all the time, old stuff from World War II, World War One. It's right on the tip of my tongue, and I just can't get it to come up for a second. I don't know what the hell I'm thinking. Brain took a dump. Basically, it's parkerizing. Jesus freaking
oh,
Christ. He gray parked it. So the gun is all gray parkerized right now, and it looks amazing. And he put some Polish wood, red wood on the front, and I put a Bakelite that they call it orange Bakelite, but it looks like red grip, and I put that on it, and it's got that Voltar AR-15 stock conversion on it, and I've got a BMS Mission First Tactical stock on it, and it
oh,
looks amazing. It's a really awesome rifle. Plus the fact that it's a SAR-1 Romanian, which is like the most expensive Romanian AK you can buy now. And I just lucked out. I bought it off the shelf. I kid you not, for $260,
oh, nice.
probably 15 years ago.
Now as far as I remember, when you said phosphating, like you were correct because phosphating and parkerizing are the exact same thing. A manganese like phosphate coating, right? Like
Right.
it's not magnesium; it's a manganese. I
Yeah.
hear a lot of people get that wrong. They say like it's a magnesium phosphate or whatever, but no, it's a manganese. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure if I'm saying that word right. That's not a word I use very often. But manganese uh, phosphate's the same thing as parkerizing, like right? Like it's
Right.
also
Right.
so that
I'm just trying to use a
I don't think
term
there's
that
a
most people would
difference,
be able to relate to, and they'll
right?
be like,
Relate
"Oh,
to.
I know what he's talking about."
But is there a difference at all as far as because they can pretty much be the same thing, but is it maybe a difference in the way it's applied or something? I don't know. There might
I'm
be a
not
subtle
sure.
difference. There might be a subtle difference, but as far as I know, I've always thought of those two as like the exact same thing. Whenever I've heard someone say phosphated or parkerizing, I've just always thought of it as the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much of a difference. It's not like a difference between um, like nitrite carbonization and melanite. Now there is a difference in those two. Melanite is a copyrighted finish,
Yeah.
and basically to copy that, you have to use a specific amount of material in a certain manner to be able to get that type of nitrate finish, which is known as melanite because of its specific particularities on how you stage and apply the process.
Let's see. Let me go back and check the chat, see if there's any more. Let's see. Obsidian Peanut says, I also spilled used marbles in the theaters while watching Kung Fu Panda 3, and I felt massively embarrassed. He spilled used marbles? I wonder if that's like maybe a candy or a term for a candy, or like, do you mean like actual like marbles that you played with as a kid? I don't know why you'd have a bag full of marbles in a theater.
Dude, I don't understand why he would have like refried beans, or what was he saying before that he spilled?
uh, he said he said that he spilled like baked beans, but I think there was like a candy called baked beans or something, right? Back
I
in the
don't know.
yeah, I'm pretty
If
sure
the
there was a
guy
candy called like baked beans or something. I'm almost positive I remember that candy.
in
And
a
so I think
greenish colored box with the beans in a oval in the middle,
I don't
like
remember.
see you could see them.
I just remember getting them when I was a kid and like Halloween candy and stuff like that. I don't
Yeah.
specific, but I'm pretty sure there was like Boston baked bean candy or something. So I think that's what he's talking about. Marbles, maybe he's referring to some other kind of candy. Unless he had a bag of marbles. If he had a bag of marbles in a theater, like an actual bag of marbles, well, I got to give you props for that because that's just got to be this is be fucking great watching them roll down, right? Especially if you're in the back, watching this like thing of marbles roll down and hit everyone's feet, like roll all the way down to the front because you know they're all sloped, right?
Yeah.
So, and Rupin says, "Yo." Olivia just yarfed all over the kitchen. Yay! But I think we're gonna call it a night. We went a little bit long, but that's okay. Do you have anything else you want to add, David?
No, I think that we had a pretty good show. I would appreciate all y'all out there giving us a thumbs up, and thank you for participating in tonight's show. We hope to have more of you back next time and continue the conversations on about AR-15s in general. If you'd like to hear us talk about anything in particular, we would love to have your suggestions. And that wraps it up for me, Dead Horse.
And yeah, just remember, go over, check out gunchannels.com. It's absolutely free to join over there. We're always hanging out over there, hanging out in the lobbies or other people's shows, commenting. If you ever want to come over, pick our brains, you can find us there. You also leave a comment on any of our YouTube videos, and I get those notifications, and and I always make sure I answer everyone back. And let's see here. Let's see. Next week's show we have coming up is AR-15 receiver sets and handguards. So next week's show, I think we're going to be focusing on different styles of receiver sets. So we'll probably be covering billet, forged, polymer, different companies, talking about different companies' receiver sets and our experience with them. And I know David here has a lot of high-end receiver set experience. I have a lot of low-end receiver set experience, so we should be able to cover the whole gambit of receiver sets and a lot of different companies, because I know we both own a lot of different type companies' receiver sets, and handguards. So we'll be talking about different drop-in handguards, free float handguards, M-lock versus key mod versus Picatinny. We'll be talking about that whole gambit of everything to do with handguards. So that'll be on Show and Tell, show number 4, next Thursday, which is the 19th. So we hope to see you guys then. 7 o'clock, around 7 p.m. Eastern time is when we usually start, sometime right around there, give or take 15 minutes or so. And that's it. Thank you all for tuning in. You guys all have a good night, and hope to see you guys over on Gun Channels.
Take it easy, ladies and gentlemen.